Test, test, test. Okay.
I like the silence.
We all agree?
Workroom or just-
Yeah, we're recording.
Okay, we're ready.
So good afternoon. My name is Mike Wicker. I'm the mayor of Cottonwood Heights. Today is Tuesday, August 16th, 2022, and this is the Cottonwood Heights City Council work session. First item on our agenda today is a review of our business meeting agenda. And we'll begin with a pledge of allegiance. And then we have something cool. We're gonna have our Community and Economic Development Director, Mike Johnson, present our beautification award for each district and then for one commercial business. And do you want to say anything about that, Mike?
I'm just gonna plan to introduce it, and then as I go through each winner, I'll give you, we have these certificates for each of you to hand out, and I'll just defer to each of you to say a few words about the winner you each selected.
So you'll probably be down at the podium, right? So we'll have the council, as your district comes up, you'll be able to sit at your seat and say
Come
whatever
down.
you want,
Come down.
say whatever
Come down
you
and take a
want,
picture.
and then go take a picture.
Yep.
Okay. So that's something fun. I'm looking forward to that. Then, of course, we all have our city council committee reports, which I think has been really, really positive, and I've gotten great feedback from those that have listened. And so we'll continue that again this evening. And then we'll follow that up with a citizen comment period. After our citizen comments, we'll go to our standing quarterly reports, and we'll have first our Finance and Administrative Services Director, Scott Jurgis, give a monthly financial report. And then our Assistant Chief Riley Pilgrim from United Fire Authority will give his report. So we're looking forward to both of those items tonight. We have 4 legislative items on our agenda tonight, beginning with consideration of ordinance 387, approving the vacation and consolidation with adjoining city-owned realty of a portion of the 3000 East right-of-way. You want to say that again? No? And actually Shane will talk about that. He's not here, right? Do you want to talk about it?
Matt or just briefly, this is the public works yard. We have setback requirements for the building. We have, once again, reminder everybody, we have a very tight spot to try to put a building on and everything we need to do. So we're making some adjustments in our property line as and related to our right of way on 30th East. 30th East is not changing in width. There's no changes to the road. Everything stays the same. It's an imaginary line, if you will, that's being shifted to give us our, I can't remember, Mike, 15 to 20 foot setback that's required on the building from a right of way from the property line.
Okay.
And
Okay.
Shane has all the stuff that makes it work.
Okay.
So that's a brief overview.
So I wasn't gonna repeat that in the business meeting, but I might have
Okay.
Shane.
Yeah,
see if
Shane
wants to
can, yeah,
address
he
it
can
as well.
certainly
Okay.
tell you how the instruments are done.
Perfect. Thank you, Matt. Appreciate that. The next item for tonight will be consideration of resolution 2022-42, accepting a bid and approving entry into a construction contract with Peck Striping Inc. for the 2022 citywide striping project. Matt.
Yeah, this is I want to say it's our annual, but we've carried over into the second fiscal year. Last year, we had a lot of difficulty getting paint. There was, once again, the shortage. There was shortage of glass beads, there was shortage of paint, there was shortage of certain types of paint. We've finally been able to get a contract and find a contractor that has the paint and the beads and everything. We're bleeding 2 fiscal years together to make up for some lost time, but that's what this contract is for. The citywide striping all over.
So we didn't do this last year.
We did not stripe last
Okay.
year, but we're carrying some of that fund forward so that we're expanding it, picking up more items like speed bumps, crosswalks, stencils, a little more than what we normally would. So it's like our second, doing 2 years into one.
Okay, perfect. Questions, comments from the council? Sounds good. Okay. Let's, the next item tonight will be consideration of resolution 2022-43, approving an interlocal agreement with Canyon School District for busing services
I can address
Do you wanna address
that.
that?
Yeah, so this is something that we've done year in and year out. Part of our participation with the big Cottonwood Marathon is making sure that we impact the life, health, and safety of individuals by not having so many go up the roads and then come back down. So this allows for us to enter into an interlocal agreement, and for the busing services, we have to do that because it's with school district policies that they work with an interlocal entity. There's insurance as part of that. And like I say, this is something that we've done year in and year out for this, and we're recommending approval of it.
And so this is what we'll use to transport all the runners up to their
Yep,
locations.
yep,
Okay,
exactly.
perfect. Questions? No. So the next item will be consideration of resolution 2022-44, approving an expense reimbursement agreement with Brooksy LLC concerning the 2022 Big Cottonwood Marathon.
Same thing, ongoing. We've done this year in and year out. This is for reimbursement of costs that we incur, including the busing services for the marathon. And so we're entering in it with Brooksy and recommending approval of it.
This will include police and basically everything, all of our expenses. Yep, great. And then the last item tonight will be a consideration of our consent calendar. The meetings from August 2nd. Okay. Item 3 on our work session agenda is we are honored to have the board chair for Utah Transit Authority, otherwise known as UTA, Carlton Christensen, here with us today. Carlton and myself and Tim got to spend some time together in Washington, DC. Even though we were at different conferences, it was fun to get to know Carlton better, and we're excited to have him come and give us a little bit of an update of your priorities and where UTA is, and we're excited for you to be here. So,
well, thank you, Mayor. It's I'm pleased to have Darren Robertson with me. Darren is our acting planning director and also our director of innovative mobility, and we appreciate staff's accommodation to our PowerPoint. We all realize that we all had personal Zoom accounts and not work-related Zoom accounts, and that created a little bit of a challenge. So, but I wanted if we go to the next slide. A couple of things I wanted to touch base with, and when you look at this list, you're like, well, none of these are in Cottonwood Heights, but I wanted to do it as a frame of reference and speak about a potential thing that we might consider in enhancing transit service in Cottonwood Heights, and so I'll go through some examples here in a little bit, and then also talk about propensity. And propensity is how we as an agency look in as equitable way as we can at both demographic and population densities and attributes about the population. For example, do they have any cars? And so zero car households have a higher propensity to use transit for obvious reasons because they don't really have any other choice. Frequently, lower income households tend to use transit a little more likely, and then of course density plays into that. But as we look at propensity, it also helps us in determining where our service should be. I want to talk about the current service here in Cottonwood Heights, and then just how we approach planning. So go to the next slide. In late 2019, we began a new service that we now call UTA On Demand, or someone known as microtransit service. And this is, we liken it to a Uber or Lyft type of service. You have an app and you tell it where you want to go. You confirm where you currently are. The biggest difference in microtransit is it's limited to a geocoded area. And the second part of that is you may have other passengers on the ride with you. So if there are 3 or 4 other people going to the same location, that van may stop a couple times and you may have to stop a couple times on the way to that location, especially if it's along that route. And the other piece of it is it may not pick you up at your front door. You may have to walk out to a corner on a arterial or a street intersection that is maybe a short distance from your home. And it may drop you off at a space not right in front of the building that you want to go to. So, but another difference is that the cost of that service is our normal bus fare service, or $2.50, and you can transfer to other places to do that. I give you that background because what we have found is that in service areas where what we would call coverage, meaning we want to provide service, but it doesn't have the densities that justify fixed route service. It can sometimes, it often will provide a better level of service, and it often is a much better alternative to a fixed route bus. So in this pilot area, we did it in the south end of the valley, and it included some of the community of South Jordan, but all of Harriman and Riverton, Bluffdale, Draper, and a little bit of Sandy. And we started it in November of 2019, and then we had this event that came around in March, and transit just kind of dropped off the face of the earth. Although interestingly enough, it told us a lot of where our essential workers live, because they kept using our service. In this service, though, while it had a drop, it gradually came back, and we also discovered while our transit locations, for example, for Trax or Front Runner, were frequent destinations, the Walmart or the grocery store or the doctor's office or the church, those kinds of things were also locations for that. And so in those communities, it told us that people were trying to get to some essential services. Let's see, why don't we go to the next slide?
Did you use your normal buses for those?
No, we use primarily a van vehicle.
Like a minivan.
Like a minivan. They have power, well, all minivans now have power side doors, but the driver generally controls those doors. And some of the vans do have wheelchair accessible ramps in them. And so that opened up a lot of doors for people who previously didn't qualify for paratransit service.
What are the capacities of most of the vans? Do they vary very much, or?
They're similar. Do you want to describe how many might be in a particular van?
So as Carlton mentioned, so we kind of have a mixed fleet. So we just have regular vans, which wouldn't have capacity for wheelchairs, and generally they're about 6 seats. They're actually Toyota Siennas that we use. Branded as mentioned, UT on demand, and then about 50% of the fleet is actually outfitted for wheelchair accessibility, and we've actually changed the configuration so we have these side loading vehicles, which is much more convenient, a better experience for our customers. And so that has a reduced capacity overall, just so we can accompany wheelchairs. So depending if we determine to use the front passenger seat or not, you probably have 3 to 4 ambulatory seats and then 1 wheelchair in the vans.
What distance would somebody walk more than 2 or 3 blocks to get to the arterial or collector where they would board?
So
Sorry, please.
I mean, much like the fixed route bus. So we kind of think about what's the average distance someone has to walk to a bus stop. And so we set these parameters, which we can change and configure, but we really set a goal of a 1/4 mile as a maximum distance. It doesn't
Maximum
mean
of a
every
1/4
time you're going to walk
Yeah.
a 1/4 mile.
That's interesting. I just, yeah.
It's good. It's a great question.
Sorry, I'll stop after this. We should note that if you do use a wheelchair accessible vehicle, that there's no walking distance required. The vehicle would go door to door so that, someone who has a mobility device.
What percentage of seniors are using your microtransit? Do many seniors, are they brave enough to do that, or is it, what are the?
I don't know that I have exact numbers for you, but
No,
we
I
do
just am
see
curious.
very
what is it?
different demographics using it, from seniors to people with disabilities to younger people to I think we've seen a wide breadth of people. So I just don't give you the exact
Yeah.
numbers.
In each of our deployments, for the most part, we replaced low performing fixed route busing. And so economically, while UT on demand costs a little bit more for us to provide the service, our ridership numbers increased pretty substantially in this target area, and for not a lot more money than our fixed route buses were, and they're at a higher level of service. Really.
What, I just having never gotten to experience, so a person calls, how soon can they get a service?
Generally within about 15 to 20 minutes
Oh,
at the
that's
most.
amazing.
And while our primary source of request is through an app called UT On Demand, if you want to download it and look at it, we do have a phone option. We know that to the prior question of seniors, not everyone is comfortable using a smartphone. Let me just go through a couple of other examples where we have deployed this service recently. And in the west side of Salt Lake City, this service is actually subsidized by Salt Lake City. They wanted to enhance east-west movement, or excuse me, north-south movement on the west side of their city. And so they are using fundamentally the same service. It's available to anybody that's in that area. And in their case, we made some changes in August to some of the bus routes, and they were worried that it would also have some limiting factors. But this, as a city, made a commitment to do that. That service has happened just a little over a year now, and is growing in popularity. Next slide. This gives you an idea. The map on the right is the south end of the valley, and this is just a snapshot in time with where those trips, and it gives you a sense that you think you know where everybody in the community needs to go, and so often everybody's need is a little bit different. And but the high focal points there, as you can tell, are transitions where they go onto our front runner track service to go elsewhere. Next slide. We recently, in August, as part of our change state, discontinued routes in South Davis County. That terrain of that community is fairly hilly. It wasn't very conducive to a lot of fixed route people getting to bus stops. For a lot of people, going downhill wasn't too bad. It's when they got off the bus and had to go back home that was a challenge. And in that case, we made the decision to deploy in this zone and eliminate a couple of fixed route buses. Next slide. Similarly, in Tooele County, we recently started a program here, and that's just beginning. But it repurposed a couple existing bus routes, and we've looked at it. It's had some benefits without question. And
Can I ask a question? So
Sure.
like, well, where are the residential densities coming into play? Because I know Grantsville is kind of exploding. I mean, so a lot of people are trying to commute, right? to Salt
Yeah.
Lake City. Are you considering offering an express bus? Or
There are bus services. They would have to transfer at a point to get on those fixed route buses going into Salt Lake. So they could either be within the Tooele area, or they would just simply make a transfer at a. And this is an important piece too, having a transit a transfer point or connection point within a community where those different modes of transportation can come into play is an important piece of that. So next slide. This is the Cottonwood Heights and the microtransit propensity, and I don't know, Darren, do you want to talk through sort of how we are currently looking at Cottonwood Heights and things that we take into account?
Sure, and so as part of any process of actually standing up a microtransit service, we go through and do on-demand simulation and modeling to get a sense of how a service might perform. If it meets some of those parameters that is suggested when we look at propensity, the demand for ridership, and the likelihood that we can serve the demographics we're talking about, and the likelihood of what type of ridership we expect. And so in 2020, we did go through and look at several parts. In fact, we looked at our entire service area, trying to get a better sense of, where do we have either existing service that doesn't perform to our standards, or do we have a lack of coverage? And so we looked through our entire service area, and we did see that looking at both Cottonwood Heights, and this does include Sandy, as you can see there is a higher potential to see on-demand service in this area where people would use it. Where you see there is those darker spots are really high dense or populous areas where we see a high percentage of people using the microtransit service. So when we did look at this area, we do see some real potential for a microtransit service working along with whether fixed route services are currently being operated. And I believe we're going to talk about that. So this is a process that we'll go through every time. And we have looked at this. Obviously, we use pre-COVID data. So, things have changed. We always look at this prior to launching a service, but it is part of our process. And we do have an initial understanding that we do think that there is some potential that a microtransit service would perform well in this community.
Because that's what this shows overall mode share score is 11. out of
Yeah.
25. For example, how does that compare to the first one where you did out in the south end of the valley or possibly west side? Any of those others, is that fairly?
You're actually
low?
mine. You don't need a 25 on this one, and I kind of regret putting that on there because it's a
Well,
little
no,
bit
I-
deceiving, but the current service is around a 13 or 14. I
Okay,
believe.
so it's, yeah, and that's what I would just kind of gauge. That helps.
Yeah,
Yep.
it just falls just below that service guideline, which is the one sort of challenge is that in this case is that we probably wouldn't look at eliminating any underperforming routes. The two routes that do exist in Cottonwood Heights are solid routes. They meet our service standards. And so that's the one challenge coming against offering a new service here is financially is that we wouldn't have a route to those operating dollars to swap that out. However, if there was an interest in the city one day of, partnering or looking at that, at least initially, and then if ridership hit a certain level, maybe there's a long-term commitment.
This is
So,
one of the things I'd like to have appear in our next topical survey to find out if the citizens of Cottonwood Heights are interested in more transportation alternatives, that they'd be willing to see a tax bump. I know in Salt Lake City, I think it only meant 35 to the average homeowner, $35 more per year to do some significant improvements. And I'd love to see our next topical survey make it pretty graphic, like, would you be willing to see your taxes go up by $35 a year to offer so that we could look at possibly working with UTA on improving service.
please go to the next slide, and we're always open to conversation. I didn't expect an answer here today, but I just wanted to at least set the table.
But that is the kind of question that's the way to phrase the question that really
Yeah.
puts it into. For this much, would you do this?
Yeah,
Yeah.
That's absolutely a
Because
question.
most people say, I don't want more taxes, but then if it's $35 a year per household, they might go, oh, well, yeah.
so our regular bus service are these three routes. On weekday 30 and then on weekends 60 minutes. And you can see the ridership there. Obviously, in a couple of those cases, you also include ski bus service, and the ski bus service is a lot busier on a weekend. And interestingly enough, despite the sort of mediocre snow of this last season, our ski bus service was much busier this year than it was the prior year. And so we did see increased ridership. We're not looking at lessening that effort. In fact, we're thinking out with our vehicles how we might more effectively do more ski bus service with, we're like others are constrained by the number of bus operators we can actually hire, and we've been challenged by that this year. But
Do you have any idea why the ski bus service was greater?
we think, especially on those busier weekends, there just was people didn't want to drive up the canyon, and they looked at it as an opportunity to get on the.
Well,
Some
if
of the
I,
resorts included a pass with their.
And then the resorts this year, we made a much stronger arrangement with them and their employees as well. And their employees also had a pass to ride our.
well, and if I may venture a guess, living in District 4, and I rode the bus this winter, and I canvassed the people on the bus. There was like 2 of us from Salt Lake County, and the rest were all from out of state. So I think between the Epic and Icon passes, we have people that, you know, are looking for a deal, so they're not staying up at the resort, but they're staying somewhere where they can ride a bus to get back and forth. So I don't, unless you actually surveyed your riders, I didn't seem like there was a lot of enthusiasm from locals.
No.
It was more people from out of state.
Interesting.
So I realize the whole ski and the canyons is another discussion. I won't belabor.
We're
I
not
just-
gonna take an hour today to do
I just have one more slide, and I know we're on a tight schedule here. I wanted to outline our planning process. We go through an annual, first of all, we're commencing this year with a long-range transportation plan. UTA has never done a long-range transportation plan. If you asked us sort of what's our vision for the next 10 years, I don't think we have a document. We're part of the regional transportation plan, but the regional transportation plan doesn't include local bus service. And so it's been a need that we've identified, and we're commencing that process. Jaron and his team are working on that. That process informs a process known as our 5-year plan, which we do every 2 years. So you can do that math, but that plan is a fiscally constrained plan. And so when you look at our 5-year plan and you see the service that you're hoping for on that plan, you have a reasonable expectation that that will be service that we would implement. And then annually, we implement that based on ability to hire drivers, buses that we have, maintenance facilities to service those buses, especially if it's additional new service. And then we try to limit our changes to 3 times a year, but primarily in August. And so we just recently had our change day. So as we go through that process, and our long range plan will inform the regional transportation plan, which includes any regional or core routes. But as we look at local service, and in particular long-term, it's a great opportunity for you as a community to be engaged with us and for us to be engaged with your transportation plan. I would strongly encourage communities to have a good transportation plan, even if you're just updating a general plan, that there be a piece there that we look at transit, that we may even look at where a logical place for a transit center could be. So for example, if you had UT on demand, you're going to have to transfer those riders at some point to our system. And where could that best be done, and how could it complement development that might be taking place around that? So those are conversations we would welcome and be of asset to you as you think through those needs. So did I miss anything, Jaron?
I think you did a good job. I guess we can answer any
Yeah,
questions.
we'll certainly answer questions, but Mayor, I know you have a tight schedule. I want to be.
Well, no, we appreciate it, though. I do have one question. Is the ridership within the UT on demand limited to inside of a certain zone? They can't go outside? Is that what you guys said?
Yeah, so it's not, again, unlike Lyft, where you could say, take me downtown. We'll take you, we'll want to connect you to a reasonable place on our system.
Okay.
So a logical connection probably for Cottonwood Heights might be either like a light rail station, or it could be one of our north-south buses that, deliver into the university or someplace like that. And if we were to deploy systems, we would want to think through that so that, that it's a reasonable connection that people would want to take.
Yeah. Well, Jaron and Carlton, thank you.
Thank you.
Carlton is very humble, but I have to tell you, as we confirmed him in our Council of Governments, I think we had him leave the room, and it was literally unanimous that we have the right person leading this agency. So thank you for all that you do. It's appreciative.
Thank you. That's generous. Thanks for letting us be here today.
Thank you. Okay, item 4.0 on our agenda is the Brooksea Big Cottonwood Marathon is scheduled in September, as we know. And we have them here with us today. Alec Fowler who's the director of operations for this race, is going to give us a report on the race coming up in just a few weeks. So, hi, Derek. Hi.
Good evening. Thank you for letting us be here today. We're here to talk about the Big Cottonwood Marathon, which is coming up on September 10th. The first item on this agenda that's getting passed around is making sure the stakeholders, that's anybody that's impacted by the event, know the dates, the time, and the traffic detours and routes that will be in place during the event. Those are Union Park Center, Old Mill Golf Course, the post office, UTA, FedEx, and UPS, which have all been contacted and we're working with. The second one is making sure that Cottonwood Heights businesses can get the most out of this event. And so next Monday, we will be walking Fort Union from the mouth of the canyon all the way to Union Park Avenue, making sure that every manager or business owner knows what's going on. Most of them we know pretty much face to face. We've been working with them for years. So and let them have an opportunity to advertise, put coupons in, whatever they would like to in the runners race bags. We had 33 businesses take advantage of this opportunity last year. That got put in the runners grab bags, the emails, the Facebook posts, those kind of things. Definitely, we work closely with Big O Tire and Firestone Tire. They're our best friends. The Everdoor direct mailer, that some of you might have received it this week.
Came today.
It came out. Yeah. So we emailed over 5,000 of those to any residents or business that would be impacted by the event. Shows them the times, the routes, how they can effectively get around during the actual race. So the yellow signs that everybody has come to either love or hate are coming out on the 29th of August. So those will be up 2 weeks prior to the event, notifying residents and local drivers again what's going on. We added Big Cottonwood Marathon to the top of all of them at the Public Works Department request, so they know what the signs are relation for. One change that we have made this year to the Fort Union closure the day before to erect the finish line and construct the closing area. We've shut that down at 5 p.m. in years past. That'll be shut down at 7. So we'll be able to get through the rush hour and let people utilize that thoroughfare for 2 more hours before, and we'll work
Friday evening.
Yeah, Friday evening. So we'll work later in the night of erecting that finish line, but that'll be at 7 p.m. instead of 5 p.m. as in years past at a request from the police department in the city. Every year we love to invite anybody that's on this council or mayor yourself to hold the tape if you'd like to the first half marathon male and female finisher, as well as marathon male and female finisher. I think Councilman Bracken has come down a couple times before. So you're more than welcome to come on down if you would like to.
Thank you.
We once again will be making a donation to the Recreation Department Foundation that we make every year to on how many runners that we have signed up. We make a donation for that. And then we also have a nonprofit that is called the Launch Team. It's an initiative to get kids off the couch and have, it's pretty incredible to see a 6 or 7 year old cross the half marathon finish line that they've been training for. So it's ages 8 to 16. We have actually almost 80 that will be running this event in September, and all the coaches are volunteers. So they train on Saturdays with them, and it's really a highlight to see them cross the finish line. So we're here to answer any other questions that anybody might have about this year's event.
Council, any comments or questions? Have you always done the every door direct mailers? Have you?
Yeah,
Okay.
that's come every.
Mine came yesterday, Scott, so I don't know, I must be higher up.
Further north. The mailman knows where the mayor lives. Years early.
No, well, without any other comments, thank you. We're looking forward to it, and note for the public, we are in discussions.
Okay.
So,
Okay, thank you all.
thank you guys. Okay. So we have three different staff reports for in our work session today. So we're going to begin with our culture manager, Ann Etchell, who will give us a kind of a wrap up of our Butler days that concluded at the end of July. Come on up, Ann. Thanks for being here.
Just do a quick little update. I'm gonna meet with the committee for a wrap up, I think September 1st. We're still trying to figure out the day. Okay, it was a very successful year, having 3 days. A lot bigger. Even the carnival took up a little more room, so it made it even look bigger. But actually walking through there, I think we appreciated the room that we gave people waiting for rides. The carnival brought in a revenue of approximately $25,000, what goes back into that helps pay for the event.
To the city.
Goes in, yeah,
They
goes
took
into
a
the
lot
city.
More than that.
Yeah.
Is that higher than it's been in the past, lower about it?
This is a lot more than we've received in the past. Yeah. They hit over, I think, 110,000 altogether on their revenue part. And then our share is the 25. So it's better than what we've seen in the past too.
Okay.
The sponsorships we brought in, I brought in 15,000, a little more than 15,000 this year on sponsorships. Vendors, these are the vendors down in the middle of the aisle, the merchandise and things like that. That was about 9,000, which was a lot more because I got carried away with vendors, but we still felt it worked out. I turned a lot of vendors away. Cottonwood Heights now is the place to go. Food vendors, we had about $5,100 in that and had about 17 vendors. So total revenue that we brought in approximately, I haven't done the whole full books, is about $55,000 that we brought in to the event. The event usually spends about 110 to 120. I don't think I'm going to be quite that high, but again, I'm still working the numbers. So this definitely offsets the cost that the event costs for the residents. So that's the numbers part. Into the events, painting in the park. This is sponsored by the Arts Council. They do pay for a lot of the items, which helps with their grants that we write. They had about 120 people at the event. They love it. It's huge. If you haven't seen it, it's fun to see everybody there painting the same picture. They want to continue doing it. We want to stay on Thursdays on that. So it's fun. I actually enjoy it. And so that everybody else trying to get into, you have to actually sign up because we run out of seats on that one. Chalk art went way above and beyond what we've ever. Whitney Dodge is over this, and she brought in 39. We had 39 paintings on the ground.
Well,
You hadn't seen it.
Amazing stuff.
Amazing. It was amazing. She's really gone above and beyond, and she's excited to get going for it next year. So we'll see what happens next year on that. We kind of stopped it because we thought we were going to run out of spaces to do it, because most people don't want to go all the way down to the south side. They want to stay right there in the front. So we kind of like closed it at one point. But we're going to relook at some of the things and how to improve that. Car show had about 125 people, cars there. It's a big hit, always has been. But we're considering, out of everything that we were doing, this is one of the big things that we're considering is moving that to Friday night. I still have to talk to police. But I've been talking to some of the committee members. It's something I've wanted to do for a while. And now the sponsor for that and the car show person over that, Chuck, definitely they really do want to move it to Friday night. The biggest problem we have is they melt out there. It's so hot. So we're thinking maybe Friday night would be a better fit. And we're kind of right in the middle of the parade coming down, and those cars are trying to get in. So that's always been kind of a logistic nightmare for us. And so moving that to Friday, we wouldn't have that part. So that's something that we're gonna discuss. That would be our biggest change of the whole event.
Car show and movie in the park.
Yeah.
I was gonna, we
So the
could,
car show would be done, then the movie would just start up.
we could invite the car show winners going to parade route too the next day.
Yeah.
And, you know,
We had 17 food vendors. I had 18, one couldn't make it. I think that was a good number. Do you have any comments on that? Did anyone see? I saw the lines, but they seemed pretty
Iceberg needs
okay.
to make shakes faster.
Yeah,
They can
Yeah.
do that in this,
I also stood in that line. Yeah, it was a
Yeah.
long, but
Obviously very popular, yeah.
yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah,
that-
they're-
it's kind of a given about 8:30 on Saturday night. You're just, it's gonna.
it's not, yeah. We do have that other lady that does the peach ice cream too. So she does pretty good too. I think she might be a resident. So we did have about 40 of the retail vendors in the center. Historic committee is excited. They love it and they will be back. And there's talks about maybe doing a different route. So we'll see how that goes.
The
We're gonna-
historic walk.
Yeah,
that
yeah,
walk was
yeah, the walk,
great.
yeah, they're back and they will do their booth again and they love the placement.
Do we know how many people participated in that walk?
I was
We did
there.
it
There was a
twice,
Did it
right?
twice, yeah. I don't have the
Saturday morning, there was about maybe a dozen of us.
number. It doesn't.
Yeah,
15, yeah, 15 or 20.
And then I don't know what was on Thursday.
And then
Saturday
Thurs-
morning.
Yeah, Saturday morning, and then, yeah, I was there Saturday morning.
Saturday
so.
morning.
yeah. That was
Yeah,
it was
good.
Wasn't it? Yeah.
Yeah, we're talking about, maybe I mentioned to him, maybe the oatmeal would be kind of cool. I'd love to get some history of that area. So we'll see. That there will be something will continue. And they will continue their booth in the same placement. They really love that placement of the booth right there.
It was nice. There was a lot of
A lot
traffic
of
there. a lot of
foot
people
traffic
going.
coming right between them. We liked our placement of the information booth tent. That was accidentally had to be there because we had too many vendors. So we bumped everything, and we loved it because people would walk right in and we
Come
just
right
need,
in and-
yeah, we actually just needed signed tickets that way. Free inflatables that way, and we wouldn't even need to be in there. So, but we liked kind of some of the placement. My field managers, Jim and Chris, kind of make notes of what happens and where to put it for next year. We feel that having the inflatables free is a huge success. We did it last year and we did it again this year. I'm not seeing the lines too bad or anything else. I worry about that when you do something for free, how is it going to affect? And so far, I think we're okay with keeping it another year if we can afford it.
Great.
I might advertise a little bit different next year. Because we had Thursday, we had a few people saying, well, I didn't know you were here Thursday. So on my advertisement, which it takes in the event world, it takes 3 years to establish something. So don't give up the first year, don't give up the second, go for the third. If you don't make it, kill it. What I would do next year is actually on any of the advertisement we have out there, I would put Thursday, July 28th. Friday, July, that way that when you see it, you're like, oh, Thursday, you see that. And I think that might kick in just a little bit more, work with the Lindsay Wilcox here and push those dates out a little bit more on our Facebook and things like that. So people can get that idea. Parking issues, we had a few concerns with parking. Public Works saved me quite a bit on that. We had people breaking our barricades and just parking where they wanted. So we have to adjust parking issues next year a little bit more. Nothing major. And I don't think we had much in major changes other than mostly just some parking issues in the event.
Well, may I suggest, and maybe you've already thought of this, but since so many people do come from the blocks that surround the park, it'd be neat if you did either an incentive to incentivize people to ride their bikes or walk and show the routes, like the neighborhood bypass routes,
Yeah.
safe ways to get there.
Yeah.
And maybe even have a bicycle corral that put them right
Actually,
next
we
to
were
the park.
talking about a
Or-
bicycle corral somehow because we had so many bikes and e-bikes this year. The e-bikes were unique, so we made sure that they locked them because we couldn't guarantee their
So if
safety.
you had a corral.
But we're
maybe one
thinking
of
about
your-
down inside there to do something down in that little
So-
water retention where the basketball courts is. They can just take it down there and do something down there because they were parking it right next to us.
Yeah, that'd be
But
nice.
we've
if you
never had so
promoted
many
it.
bikes ever. We've never had so many bikes. This is the first year that we've had anyone ask us that they could put their bike there and lock it up. So,
Yeah, it'd be nice if you could kind of be graphic in your,
Yeah,
to help
yeah,
people capture their imagination.
of where they can go. But yeah,
that'd be so great.
that is on our list,
Great.
something that we noticed. We were actually kind of shocked how many bikes were there. Thank you for the input. We appreciate it. Police services, I have to thank the police this year. Great. I don't think we had, well, I didn't get I think we were fine with police services. We didn't have many incidents in the park. I didn't hear too much. Normal stuff. Yeah. So we,
Always good to have them just.
I think it's great if
You
it's
can
normal.
see them.
It's just normal. I love having the police cars right there at the front, because when you walk in, you have second thought of what you're gonna do. So I made sure that the police were right there in the front. And then when people walked in, that's just what you see.
Very
And then the
visible.
command center. So,
Doug got a little rowdy, I think Friday night, but I think.
That was Friday night.
Was it Friday night?
I tried to stir up a little trouble with the fact that you gave UFA an east-west pointing and the police were all facing west right into the sun. But they didn't really take me up on it too much, but.
no, we're somehow their tent got smaller. I'm not sure how this all went about, but they'll get a bigger tent next year. Yeah, it was pretty hot. It was really hot there.
Speaking of that, and is there
Yeah.
a way to have the parade an hour earlier, or is that difficult to do?
That is
Just-
some difficulty there, yeah.
Can you get the
We,
temperature down just a little bit?
I will try for that. That would probably be
Easier to do that.
easier for me to pull that one off than to have them. The reason, we used to be, when I first started, it was 4 o'clock in the afternoon. I bumped it to 3. We bumped it to 11, but if we go any earlier, we're asking the officers to come in even earlier. And that's the biggest one. They're already putting in, 16, 18-hour day, to make it.
I got you.
And that's the hardest is.
They love you, but not that much.
Yeah,
Yeah, that would be the logistics of that would be even.
that's good to know, because
Yeah, and that's why, we're looking at that. But it is really hot. And that would again be a logistic for the officers that have to be there. Yeah.
They have that spray truck, but that occasionally causes trouble.
Yeah, that can cause. We appreciate fire. I talked to your men when they left, your people, and they said that they didn't have much incidents, so
So it's pretty low key
low key for
Yeah.
this year.
for that.
We do appreciate the police and the fire. A couple of my volunteers on my team told me to make sure to say thank you. There is an officer and I think your person in charge, Tom, or someone. We had some bad weather coming over and they just stood there and they watched it and just sat and discussed it for quite a while. Because we just didn't know if there was some lightning coming, but it finally just kind of went away and they were like, no one went on to their own thing. So we appreciated that. Because we didn't know what to do. So, thank you. Public Works could not do this without Public Works. This amazing for what they do. What are public relations? Lindsay saved me. She took all my phone calls during it and started trying to. She would text me only if she didn't know the answer, but she had control of all the questioning. So I appreciate that. And of course, our volunteers could not do this without the volunteers. They're wonderful.
Do you know the number? How many we had?
How many total? No, I don't have it off the top of my head. I probably ordered 70 shirts. Not all of them got picked up. So, but we have a church that helped our parade at the beginning. That was our parade chair, just absolutely, the co-chairs loved it. How it ended here at the high school was perfect. It kind of just was a smooth, a little bit safer for them to dismount from theirs. I think overall, we have some little things we have to fix on the back end, but I think overall it's a success. I don't know how everybody else feels. If you have any input, like I said, I'm doing a wrap up with the committee and I can give them any input that you might have.
I think the safety measure of not throwing candy from the moving vehicles was probably the right decision, right?
And I will make a change to you guys. I'm gonna get wagons so that you guys you have like the YCC could like pull it in a wagon. You can just walk over to the wagon and pull it out instead of stopping my car or yeah, so I'm gonna make
Okay.
some changes, make it even safer for you guys for next year.
Well, my only other suggestion is to align some of the procedural things related to the parade a little bit more with our goal of sustainability for the city. And so I'd like to frankly not see all the plastic bags and, try to portray the, our mission to, reduce plastics and think sustainability. Another thing is, it was noticeable that a lot of cars that want to get near the parade will come into the side streets and then sit idling their cars to, be in their air conditioning. And so our no idling ordinance, I think if there's a way, I mean, I don't know that I have all the answers, but I just think the more that we can think about some of those things as we put together the parade would, again, portray our putting a priority on sustainability. So I don't know, does that make sense, Ann? Those are just two small things that I noticed in, but overall, I mean, it was great. I mean, the marching bands and all the, I absolutely loved all the elements of the parade. It was great. So,
I'll run some ideas by Samantha. Yeah, she's great with running ideas on that.
like baskets, the wicker baskets that get stored and, for the candy or just small things like that would be nice touches.
Tim, you also good?
Yeah, I just want to say, this event, it's amazing and it's a great event. There is so much time put into it. I just want to express appreciation for all the staff, police being there. And like I say, you feel safe being there. Our public works staff and all their efforts and everyone else. I do have to give a lot of credit to Ann. This person is under a lot of pressure and stress for weeks and sometimes months. And she is amazing. And we're so appreciative of her hard work and efforts and the extra hours and toil. We all don't know how late sometimes she's up and early mornings that she has. And so all the staff, I'm just so grateful for all of them, from police to public works, especially Ann and her efforts and the volunteers. It's an amazing event and a lot of work goes into it. So
I think I'm okay with the council echoing that.
Yes.
That statement.
Fantastic. I've never heard so many people compliment the fireworks. They just say it's some of the best they've ever seen in the valley. And but the whole event, to me, you feel safe in there.
Yeah.
You feel it's just the atmosphere is a community atmosphere, which ties us together. And I just love it. It's the greatest thing we do every day.
Well, thank you, Ann. You only have 11 and a half months till you get to go.
Already planning on everything. So, all right, thank you.
Thank you. Our next report is actually a little Cottonwood Canyon environmental impact statement discussion. And we're going to have our city council member, Ellen Burrell, lead us in this discussion. She has a PowerPoint, right?
Yeah. Well, I think we know that we have a lot of citizens in Cottonwood Heights who care very deeply about our location here. It's why certainly my constituents tell me, most of them, that they've chosen to live here. And so this Little Cottonwood Canyon EIS that's been going on now for years. We're going to do two things here in the next little while. In the September newsletter, we plan to share the current council's statement on where Cottonwood Heights positions itself related to the key elements of the Little Cottonwood Canyon EIS, of course, environmental impact statement. And so tonight we want to prepare not only to hear from council on the basics of what they want our statement to look like related to the public, but also we've been told by the Utah Department of Transportation that they would announce their final EIS in the summer of 2022. So it's ticking down. And once they do, we don't know when, but when they do announce that final EIS, then all entities from residents to our city will have a chance to give a formal comment on their final selection. So you can go to the next slide, please. So basically, there's three main elements to the EIS that directly affect Cottonwood Heights. There is what they have, their two preferences, UDOT's two preferences for the 8 miles of Little Cottonwood Canyon. And that is either to do a gondola with a 1,500 parking stall commercial garage located in our residential border of Cottonwood Heights. That would be on the east side of Lakai. So any of those 1,500 cars trying to get to the gondola parking would either drive through our neighborhoods or they would drive through Sandy and Granite neighborhoods to get around to that eastern edge. They go all the way to the mouth of Little Cottonwood Canyon and double back if they go through Sandy. Or if they come through our neighborhoods, they'll be going past the 11 intersecting streets where many of us live in District 4. Okay, so there's that, and then the piece of expanding Wasatch Boulevard. In all our meetings with the project manager for UDOT, he's made it clear that no matter what is chosen for the 8 miles of Little Cottonwood Canyon, UDOT has decided they're either going to build out to a total of 6 lanes or a total of 7 lanes, which UDOT calls either their 2-lane imbalance or their 5-lane preference. So first, we're going to start looking at what is, what is going on within. Are you sure this is the latest version I gave you?
It is.
Okay. So within Little Cottonwood Canyon, so I'd like this to be interactive. And I have the grease board. If you don't, nobody has any comments until we get to the end, that's fine too. But if you see anything that's grossly missing, obviously for the sake of time, we can't get into the very detailed letter from, you'll see here in column 1, September 2nd of 2021, our city council sent to UDOT a several-page letter outlining preferences. So I chose just 3 for the sake of discussion from that very long detailed letter to UDOT. And then I thought, as we analyze this, we can see, what is in the current statement by Cottonwood Heights, what some of these things represent for our citizenry, and also talk about what's developed in the last 11 months since this statement went out. Tim, is that letter from September 2nd of 2021? Is that anywhere on our website that people can look at it? Because I know that council members were all supplied with that, but if somebody wanted to see that.
I believe it is.
Oh, great.
We posted it when it was published. We can verify. If it's not on there now, we can put it back.
Okay, yeah, I think it'd be helpful because it's a very thoughtfully constructed position paper. So Cottonwood Heights stated that the city was against the gondola predominantly for the reason that it would have a parking structure within our residential area. And so our current September of last year, the preference was for what UDOT called their enhanced bus with PPSL. PPSL stands for peak period shoulder lanes. And so the city did say that they preferred that UDOT phase in other solutions and not go to the idea of building out either Wasatch Boulevard or the canyon until level of service was consistently a level F, which is complete gridlock. Of course, Alta and Snowbird parking lots become full. This past winter, many of you know that Alta went to a reserve parking system, and the general manager of Alta reported that it worked really well. And most of the skiers, and I don't know why we don't have a little better data from UDOT on this, but anecdotally, all the people I know that ski said there was almost no traffic problems in this last winter season because you either knew that you had a parking space at Snowbird or Alta, or if you couldn't get one, you went to ski somewhere else or rode the bus. And one of the big problems I want to make sure the council has thought about is that if more lanes are added to Little Cottonwood Canyon, that's gonna bring more cars into a place that's already maxed out. You know, it's very, you know, the two preferences of UDOT are both quite problematic. And there've been many community leaders, including the mayors of Salt Lake City, the mayor of Salt Lake County, the mayor of Sandy, the mayor of Alta, have all come out clearly and firmly, as has our mayor, certainly against the gondola. And so, and they've all stated that they want to see a phased-in approach of adding things that could well meet UDOT's original goal for a purpose stated in their original EIS was to reduce cars in Little Cottonwood Canyon on peak mornings by 35%. We know that if the variable tolling was successful at discouraging single occupancy alone going up Little Cottonwood Canyon on a peak morning is 35%. So by employing a number of these types of practical solutions, there's a number of community leaders that really believe that could solve the problem, as opposed to spending, which the spending for either the gondola or the build out of Little Cottonwood Canyon, which again is called Enhanced Busing with PPSL, pushes up against $600 million. And there's many people that feel for only a couple $100 million, there's so many things that could be done to alleviate without what in the case of either large shoulder lanes or a gondola, those are permanent, pervasive, expensive. They offer no flexibility. So the next column is to really think about the unintended consequences for Cottonwood Heights residents. If we really think about all these build out plans that UDOT has, again, not only for the 8 miles of Little Cottonwood Canyon, but for Wasatch Boulevard from the mouth of Big Cottonwood Canyon onward, that kind of construction will go on for years. This will cause roadway danger, dirt, trucks, cranes. So if that isn't scary enough, this will permanently induce additional demand through our neighborhoods. And it also, in the long-term fiscal resiliency for our city, we're going to have higher maintenance costs on our own city roads because people are going to feed into this new network, encouraging more cars to come to the edge of Little Cottonwood Canyon. So one of the things I'd like us to consider is that we make a serious statement advocating for flexible, preferably electric, agile bus fleet that not only is the big 42-seat buses that UTA already sends up our canyon, but possibly mix in some kind of van fleet that could offer shuttling, and that may be palatable to the U.S. Forest Service for stopping at trailheads. We need to really think about this as on a year-round basis. This has been another criticism of UDOT's narrow focus, which in fairness to UDOT, this was a directive given by the Utah legislature. They wanted to make sure that the ski revenues would come into the state coffers from the major ski resorts continue unabated. So, but I really would love to see our city make a real statement with vision of what it can be. And that ties to a micro hub system. I'm kind of jumping down ahead, but the idea that people could only on the peak days. I'm not saying that this is a 7-day-a-week, 365-day-a-year proposition, but on those peak times when hiking, hikers are flooding into our canyons or on those peak ski mornings, that there's some viable alternatives where people could get to some kind of a shuttling system from micro hubs that are located within the valley, as opposed to encouraging everyone to drive to our foothills which will also exacerbate building more and more parking lots. So I think addressing that the vehicle miles traveled with UDOT's plan will again cause people to drive from around the valley to either, if it gets built one day, a intermodal hub at the mouth of Big Cotton Canyon, or to the 9400 South and Highland location. Any thoughts on that? Any comments?
I think our official position supports that last one already, right?
Yeah, I was just saying, what we did,
The
as far as
micro hub-
flexibility,
The micro hubs, I think we
transit, yeah, that's there, and the year-round stuff is definitely supported, I think, with the statement from before. It's, I mean, that, because I went through and read it, and I was like, yeah, this is, I still agree with what we have, it is 3 pages. So we would need to shorten it down quite a bit to get it in the newsletter, but,
a new statement.
yeah.
Yeah,
Or, I mean, there was 2 things. There was an article to the for the September newsletter. That's one thing. Certainly when they come out with a record of decision, that may very well, probably either way, it would probably want a note or comment by us.
well, there'll be a final EIS. This is the next step, and that's going to hit likely in the next few weeks, because they promised they would do that by the end of summer. And I think that this council should definitely make a very, powerful statement. We have 30 days to do that from the time the final EIS hits, and then the record of decision won't be until the winter of 2023. So we're going to go, in case anybody doesn't. So we're going to go from their 2 preferences for a little complicated. They're going to announce what the preference is as opposed to 2. So
Yeah, that's a great time to be saying, yeah, this is what we agree with. This is where we still have issues. I mean, that absolutely needs to be done.
So Ellen, do you think what we've already reiterated is insufficient? That's my question.
I think it could be tweaked to be very loud and clear on what we want. Right now, as I understand it, and this is why we're here together, it doesn't necessarily emphasize the key things that I believe we want, such as, well, let's go to the next slide and it'll get a little bit more precise. So the next slide talks about the Wasatch Boulevard, which I'm just calling it Boulevard throughout this analysis. Cottonwood Heights is never, now we did do a resolution this year stating that we want a 35-mile-per-hour maximum speed design for Wasatch Boulevard. So we have done that. That was not in our 2021 letter. We said we want reduced speeds, but I think we need to be stronger on that. And while, on this first row of column 1, I'm going to pick on this aesthetics and design. Actually, this is not my latest, because I know that I had more in there.
I'm going through the one that you sent me, the last final one.
And the last final one, because I amended it, Tim, based on some of your good suggestions. So this isn't, oh, well, let's just keep going and get through this. Okay, so, because what our city manager, Tim Taney, pointed out is that there were suggestions for, that speed, the road design is the important thing. And aesthetics, well, they matter. It's really, we should really, by the way, the problem has been, even though that letter was so dynamic nearly a year ago, there has been very little movement on UDOT's part to acknowledge any of these reasonable requests that the city has made. And that's very concerning to me, you know.
I guess. How and why, I mean. They have the EIS, they asked for comments, we delivered those, and they're still in the process of coming up with a solution. Like,
Well, they indicate that they respond to every single comment, which is what they said 2 years ago when they did the same process. So we'll see if the final EIS comes out and on page 20,102, we find that they responded to everything in our letter, then I'll eat my hat. I'll love that. That'd be great. But it's concerning to me that these very reasonable requests have, you know, why we meet with them every single month. Why do they not acknowledge the viability of any of these? But so what I would like to see is more concise, to the point. You know, like for instance, you know, we've asked that they revise the pedestrian bridges to grade separated crossings, and you know, more numerous crossings. But again, if you look at what is in their EIS currently, it still is a high pedestrian bridge of roughly 2.5 miles, one at by the 7-Eleven and one by the high T intersection. So that, you know, statistics show that when people are trying to cross the road and there aren't frequent enough crossings that are safe, they're going to still run across the road. And that is not what UDOT claims, that they are supportive of active transportation. But we're not seeing it in their plans. Of course, we're going to be watching what they put out at their final EIS, which again should come soon. They also are using a baseline study of traffic that was done in 2015. And we need some current data. And because other than the ski periods, ski mornings, we're not seeing the kind of traffic that they are projecting forward. In fact, since we're now in 2022 and their studies were done in 2015, and they base them on a certain percentage of increase year on year. Okay, well, has that happened? No. If it's only 1% more traffic, or maybe it's 1% less. I mean, this kind of data is what I think our city, if they're not willing to provide it, I think we should put it in our budget, and we need to study these things. But we cannot allow for these decisions to be made, you know, based on incorrect information. Is there, I kind of skipped around in here. Does anybody want to bring up any of the, I know you all can read, so I don't need to read it all to you.
So is it possible to be in favor of both pedestrian bridges and active or crossings across the entire boulevard as well? Or do you not want a pedestrian bridge at all? Is that?
Well, I don't want to see that at the, see, one of the things that crosswalks do at grade level, ground level, is they send the message to the motorist. Wow, there's people that are going to cross in front of me. That's what we want. And my problem with pedestrian bridges is when the assistant director of UDOT 3 years ago told me, Ellen, have you ever stopped at the there by USU on Front Runner, and then you know that pedestrian bridge that goes over I-15? We're going to build one of those for you guys in Cottonwood Heights. And I just went, wow, that's not what we want, because we don't want people to think that they're on a high-speed roadway. And that's why I am not in favor of pedestrian bridges. I want to have things on the ground, numerous crossings, preferably chicanes and preferably roundabouts, that send the signal to drivers. When you come in up from the mouth of Big Cottonwood Canyon, you're driving toward Bengal, you're coming into a residential area, you know, and you're not out of the residential area until, you know, south of the high T intersection. And that's, Mayor, that's such a good question, but I would much rather see the money spent on chicanes and roundabouts and crossings that are really solid with red flashing light, whatever we need to let people know that, you know, people live here. I think I put somewhere in here, show me one other state route in the state of Utah that has 11 intersecting residential streets that has a 50-mile-an-hour speed limit. I don't think it exists.
Wait, do we have a 50-mile up there?
Yeah, it's
Well,
50
well,
miles.
that says,
Right, but I think a pedestrian bridge to me sounds like one of the safest things that you could have, isn't it?
So I
It's
think
not
but
that
what
it's-
he's saying is people aren't gonna go a mile and a half out of their way to get to that, so we
they definitely won't.
we want a lot of
Right,
safe,
ingress, egress, and kind
Yeah,
of the.
and
semaphore
almost
so
every-
that we can get
every-
through there.
yeah.
On-grade crosswalks. By of themselves, that one I have a hard time swallowing. They in and of themselves slow down drivers. I don't see that.
Well, it,
But, for example, this one that's just down here, in and of itself, it has nothing to slow anybody down unless someone pushes the button. And that's a little, you know, but it does happen to be by a high school. If you've got some other thing that says there's a place to do it, but I know there's also some concern about putting mid-block crossings in just anywhere. They've got to really be warranted because it's, I guess, something that people aren't just looking for as much. And so, for example, the front runner example, there were really no way to do that with the freeway. I could see some uses there. I know that if we can get, I think UDOT reducing the speed on Wasatch should be 40, should be a no-brainer. They should do it tomorrow. They should have done
I
it
thought
a year ago.
Yeah,
That should happen because you're right. It's the 50 is a little bit legacy from a different time when there wasn't as many homes and stuff in the area.
well, these landscaped, intermittent landscaped medians that offer a refuge for a pedestrian, you know, would be a step in the right direction. So
You're right, which I think
so,
was in some of at least their aesthetics and designs. That's why I'm really be interested to see what they're.
well, I
that
would like to
design.
see those aesthetics. We put them in the Wasatch Boulevard master plan. But UDOT's, the graphics that I've seen, and if anybody can correct me, please do. But all the graphics that I've seen show a highway design, you know, a median, it's not landscaped. I mean, to me, they've given no promises for that kind of thing. They've given verbal, well, we might consider it and this and that, but they have not made any gesture toward a 35-mile-an-hour speed limit.
Well, you just said that was a jump to something. I was gonna say, the ones that I've seen from them do incorporate those things.
Please share them.
Well,
not seen any of
the
those.
pictures that were in was in our packet, some of those, because they haven't designed it yet. And so where did we go?
I believe one of the things that they've done is commit to working with us on that design and to have us involved in the design component.
I mean, I see this and I see something like, that's
That's
something
that's
that,
from the Wasatch Boulevard master plan.
So
That's-
I can maybe clarify. UDOT prepared a document called the Wasatch Boulevard Corridor Aesthetics Plan.
okay,
It's not our master plan and it's not the EIS, it's
The one
a
that-
separate document. And I think that's probably what you're seeing in there. There are screen grabs from that in our city.
but they know we're serious about, they better.
It's also in our master plan as well, but it is in a UDOT document, but you're correct, it's not in the EIS documentation, except for by reference that they'll try to incorporate the principles of that document.
Because once the EIS is done, they still have to get around to funding and designing. Is that correct?
But what they did supply in there, it was in November, a year and a half ago, was diagrams and a very detailed diagram of sound walls. That they wanted, they said, and we may choose to put sound walls. So now the aesthetic experience of driving between, in the city between the canyons, one of the most scenic places that you could have, instead of pine trees and things like sound walls. Sound walls like you see on Highland Drive. So there's a lot of contradictions that make me as a council person very uncomfortable with UDOT. I want to, I want to believe the best, but that's not what appears in their documents. So when the final EIS comes out, we'll see whether they have modified anything, but if it remains what is in the current EIS, it is sound walls and a highway, and it's.
One thing on sound walls, I verified with you, Dot, that the only way that they can put up a sound wall is if the residents directly behind it have a majority to vote for it. So that if there are sound walls, it would be the residents up there voting for it. And I think that has to go with speed. I think if we can get them at a lower speed, then I don't think that sound walls, residents will want those. So let's cross our fingers. I actually think we have a chance with speed than I think maybe others do, but that's from conversations I've had. Josh knows as the project manager that he can't even talk about it because it's not his decision with speed, and we'll see. Hopefully we can continue those conversations and then they'll listen to us. But maybe I'm too myopic, but I like to be positive, and I think they'll work with us. I really, really do. So
I mean,
cross our fingers.
their paradigm shifted from this process to where they said, you know what, we probably do need to start working with local municipalities as far as some design and aesthetics. They said, yes, we'll do it with you. Then they went and did it with Park City. And so I'm hopeful and expecting that statement is still the case. I don't see them as the enemy. I see them as a cooperative partner. And so, I guess, just from a couple of things, and I've said these things to you, but at least my vision, as I understood, or I guess as I see Little Cottonwood Canyon, if they put one lane up there for the bus, it goes up, it comes down, it doesn't add any car lane for traffic. It's just for use on peak days. At least that would be my vision of what would happen up the canyon. It does need to be something that handles people year round, and needs to go somewhere other than just out in Snowbird. I got that right. Is the EIS that states they're looking for a 35% reduction in cars?
The original
is
EIS
that in the
did,
EIS?
and I think since then they talk about,
Took it out?
better. They've altered that slightly, but that
Well,
was their original.
I see some flexibility with a lane up the canyon. I also see that same flexibility with the shoulder lanes. If you're gonna keep it at the one lane each direction that is now, or two in some places, if you have a shoulder lane for the bus, that does come across and allowing the bus to
Well,
be
some of the
better.
things that just in regard to additional lanes and widening Little Cottonwood Canyon that I've not heard even discussed, but people that understand public works would bring forward. Once you widen that road, it makes the snow sheds less viable because they're having to cover more ground, and the snow plowing is going to take more time, because the snow plows, when it's a narrow road, just can have 2 or 3 trucks going, and they clear one lane and then they clear the other and they're done. But if we're gonna have a wider Little Cottonwood Canyon Road, there's gonna be a lot more snow plows trying to shove the snow off to the side and get it all the way off for 4 lanes of traffic. I mean, that puts more salt and debris into our watershed area.
I
mean, it's a real.
I also trust that, those are things they would have to do.
Well, Laura Briefer, who is over
I-
at College, she's already come out against
I-
both of their.
And that's fine. Laura's nice. Hi, Laura, if you ever listen to this, you know my voice. But the other one is growth, population growth specifically doesn't equate to the induction or the inducing of demand. Growth is happening. It's going to happen whether we do anything about it. It's how you deal with it and where you put it. And so just saying, just because there's an extra lane there, it's going to bring people in most cases, UDOT's usually paying almost a little bit of catch up, that the people are there, and they can see that the problem's coming. And so they try to make sure that it doesn't get so bad that it forces people to do something else. And that was, honestly, that was probably my biggest concern with the letter from Save Not Pave. It's like, I was like, you really want to make things go to a
Inducing
LOS.
demand has nothing to do with population. Inducing demand is when you build out
I-
more lanes, you are inducing more
No.
drivers to come and drive on that road. And if we
Not,
look at
not,
Southern
not if they don't
California,
exist. And if it's the reason you're building the lane is because the people are there and they need it to get from point A to point B, that's not.
so we need to
inducing demand.
concentrate on moving people, not moving cars.
I've heard
This
that
is a
same,
transit problem, and the legislature has hired a building company called UDOT to solve a transit problem. We need to focus on transit to move people, not to put more cars in a precious place like Little Cottonwood Canyon.
So we're not gonna have, hold on, let's let Ellen continue.
Okay,
Yeah,
so,
sorry,
let's.
I know, good conversation.
That's why we're discussing it. I appreciate Councilman Bracken bringing up his concerns. Again, you all can read. I don't need to read all this verbatim. One of the things, though, that I do want to emphasize that I think an approach that we could take, because just you brought up Save Not Pave, so I wasn't going to bring them up, but since you happen to bring up the organization Save Not Pave, they were criticized a few years ago. Why are you stopping Wasatch Boulevard from being improved? It needs to be improved. Well, that organization desperately wants to see improvements for bike lanes for all users, and that we need it now. And so what we need now is to get our UDOT Region 2 director to acknowledge that the United States Department of Transportation's 2022 Safe Systems Approach. It talks about the importance of movability, the importance of all users of our roads, and the need for transit. And if we could get someone at UDOT to be an advocate for really focusing on all users and not just give it lip service, that's what in my opinion, one of the things that the staff of Cottonwood Heights could work directly on is to get the changes made now. Because we don't know when or if Wasatch Boulevard's, the EIS for Wasatch Boulevard, when is that going to get approved, get money from the legislature? Why not be working right now, again, with the Region 2 director and see if we can't get some of the chicanes, some of the crossings, some of the traffic calming that tells a motorist that they can only feel comfortable if they're driving closer to 35 miles an hour.
Yes, I would say you'd have a hard time convincing them to do a lot of pre-construction on something that they're in the plan of overhauling and doing a master plan on. Because that's kind of what I thought I just heard you say. Let's do this stuff now, and then when they get it all figured out, they can go back and it'll either stay all the same or they'll have to tear it out and do another thing. I don't.
Well, what's the life of a person worth? You know, if a crossing
That's-
costs $20,000, are we gonna wait until people are
I'm
being
sorry,
killed?
I will not cop to saying I want to kill people.
Well, I don't think you do. I
Okay,
don't want
I
it
don't.
either. The problem with the whole thing that UDOT bases almost all their decisions on is something called LOS, and if everybody in the room knows what that is, level of service. They want a level of service of between an A to a D rating. And the problem with that is if we keep building out our arterials so that people can drive 40 plus miles an hour and never slow down, then we're going to continue to fracture the neighborhood communities throughout Salt Lake County. And that's the thing that I've learned is this isn't just a Wasatch Boulevard problem. This is a whole way of having our state dollars spent. 75% of them are spent, 70% of our tax dollars in the state of Utah are spent on making better level of service, that is building out more lanes so that motorists can drive fast and it's all for their convenience. We know that Salt Lake City, who I believe is forging new trails that we need to watch carefully here in Cottonwood Heights and follow some of their good ideas. When we had 3 different pedestrians killed within a 3-hour period a couple of months ago, Mayor Mendenhall instructed her staff to make changes within the city to make their roads slower. They've now gone from 25 miles an hour to 20 miles an hour on their local roads. They're subsidizing UTA to build more bus stops and to have higher frequency of service on several of the routes, which is another thing that Cottonwood Heights could consider, is to, especially again with these topical surveys we have coming up, to find out if residents want to see some of their taxes go up to help subsidize us working with, in this case, UDOT or UTA. I'd like UDOT to decide to do the things we want, but I think that money talks, and who knows what, you know, what we can consider if we think a little bit outside the box.
No,
So,
let me restate, I don't want to completely go to, but I mean. And I've said, I have a really hard time, I don't think all of the design and all of our road building has been to the exclusion of anything but a car. It's not that we haven't done anything. The roads have been around the way they are. That doesn't mean we can't do things better or safer, but I'm also not in a position where I'm going to legislate or purposely ignore growth or other issues. And I don't think UDOT will on Wasatch Boulevard to make it so onerous that people will say, I have to give up my car because I have no choice. I'm not going to legislate someone into making that other choice. I'm happy to encourage them. I have to provide them with the opportunity, but I don't feel.
I don't think I just want to be
lose
clear.
their
I am not advocating to take people's cars away.
No,
So I'm not sure how you,
no, I got that, but it's, let's wait till this gets to an E or an F. Let's wait till it gets so bad that they make the choice themselves, but really.
yeah, that's what we need to do. We need to let it get to E and F.
And that's.
You're not in favor of that.
I
That's fine.
absolutely.
That's
I
fine.
can't-
You
I
shared
can't
that with the council. You're not in favor of that.
I can't do that.
So what is first class transit? First class transit within Salt Lake County would mean that when a given household only wants to operate, they choose to operate with one car, that they could. Right now in Cottonwood Heights, if you're a working person, unless you're a major cyclist, you know, whatever, you're gonna be driving pretty much everywhere you need to go for everything, because we don't have continuous safe bike lanes, nor do we have continuous safe sidewalks and other. We don't have the easements that would make our community fully walkable. There's so many things that if we don't prioritize it and come up with a phased-in plan, and I think just like Carlton Christensen advocated when he presented, we have a chance now within our transportation plan, not only in the general plan, but we're also coming up with a 5-year plan that has historically focused on road repaving. But I think that this is our time to say we're no longer in the 20th century where we build everything wide, you know, bigger is always better. We need to think about operating more smart and strategically, as came out in our planning commission meeting that the council had last month.
So this first class transit, you're including. I see buses, things like that, but you're also including bicycles, walking. In that definition of transit, is that correct, or am I misunderstanding that?
Well, yes, I think it all plays together.
No, I'm just asking, just so I mean, because that's a term, that's certainly a question we could ask. If such and such and such existed, would you be willing, would your house be able to operate on a single vehicle?
Yeah,
That
would be a great,
That's a very
that'd be a great
question.
thing for the topical server. I totally agree. Does
I
any-
just haven't heard that. We just have to make sure that term is clear.
Yeah. Any other comments on this before we go to, I think, the last slide? Or no, there's 2 more slides. So could you go? To
yeah, we need to hurry a little bit. We're almost,
Okay, so,
45 minutes
so go to
into
the next slide.
going, yeah.
Please. Yeah, so, so we have, you know, so here are some of the major criteria that we would want to consider for our statement. We want to think about, you know, what we oppose and what we favor. You know, to me, I don't think our current statement includes every single one of these, but I think that equity is very important. I learned a new word. I went to a Wasatch Front Regional Council meeting last week on active transportation, and I thought that mobility was better than calling it transportation, but even better is movability. truly, you know, from people in wheelchairs to people, on bicycles, pushing strollers, all users, of all, socioeconomic levels need to have, good mobility. Obviously, public health, is reliant on mobility being sensitive to, our changing climate, our aridification that's going on. You know, we know that excessive asphalt raises summer temperatures. It doesn't filter the air. You know, when we remove greenery to build more asphalt, we're reducing our air quality. You know, and the protection of our water sources is really important. That's why it's so great that you know, the staff is working on our sleds ordinance. In the same way, we can look into our public works to really grasp all we can on our roads being the best they can be for our public health and safety. So this has gotten kind of blocked, but in the way of financial, you know, all our wider roads contribute to our storm drainage problems. And we have more road maintenance when we have all these motorist centric roadways. Again, I'm not advocating that there's no motorists anymore, but I think we can strive for better balance. Anybody have any comments here? In fact, maybe you can keep that up. I wanted to just write on the grease board if anybody has any specific problems with this or wants to add something. Is there anything we need to cite?
I think the time to probably compose a statement is once they've.
Yeah, but we need to do something for our newsletter, and that I'm sure that Heather needs that probably in the next week.
Yeah.
I probably refer, I mean, a lot of that could come from the statement that we did put out. There may be, you know, some, even the summary on it. There may be a little bit more,
Where
but
do we
not a
stand?
lot.
Can I get a sense from the council on the 35 miles an hour? Who favors actually coming out and saying that? The mayor does?
Yeah, we voted to.
Okay, so we can
approve that.
include that. That's not in the current. Do we want to come forward on these points? Does anybody have a problem with citing some of these things in a statement?
I'm not.
So we'd probably have to study this a little bit more than the time that we have right now. But I think we could make a commitment to do so before this next newsletter. So let us, I think as a council, I'll take some time to look at exactly what you're doing. Let me just say this, nobody will ever question your passion, Councilmember Burrell. So thank you for, I actually think there's 3 or 4 things that our residents agree with Councilmember Burrell's passion. And I think people want slower roads. I think they want safer roads. I think they want more active transportation on our roads. And so I think a lot of the things that you're advocating for are really, really good. And so I think I'm glad that we have you doing this, and we will take maybe this next week and maybe see if we can come to something of a consensus.
Okay.
So, okay.
I mean, this was a sample statement that can be considered. You know, it's always difficult when we're putting things out to the public to give enough information to, you know, be credible, but not get into the woods too much, or the weeds, I guess.
So I'd like to compare what we already put out to what this is here. That's what
We
I
can
would
do
like
that.
to see. it
And I think
side
we
by
can do
side.
that fairly easily.
Because I know every road that is in Cottonwood Heights is not over 40. This is a state road. That's what we're dealing with.
There's 2 differences here. It's I mean, we can say whatever we like, but ultimately it's up to UDOT. And I will still lean on, I don't see UDOT as a competitor. I see them as a partner, and we need to make sure that the statement that we send or letter or whatever is indicates that it's cooperative effort. It's not a.
A symbiotic relationship
Yeah.
that we can work together. I think that's very.
I
important.
agree with that point.
Tomorrow, we'll send you, all the council members, the letter from 2021 and then the PowerPoint.
That's in the
If you want-
packet.
Okay, it is in the packet. We'll
Yes.
resend it along with this PowerPoint
Excuse
and
me,
let you
say
look
that.
at it. And then get us
Might be
input, because we
something-
are about a week away from Lindsay's already laying out all the elements of the newsletter, so anyway.
Great. Thank you, Councilmember Burrell. I know that was a lot of time in preparation. So our last staff report is just a general plan process discussion from our Community and Economic Development Director, Mike Johnson.
Yeah, thank you, Mayor. This will only take a couple of minutes. I only have a couple of minutes for you. So we discussed, I appreciate the council's input as well as the planning commissions at our joint work session. I thought it was very helpful in kind of reframing and establishing some consensus points and next steps. I just wanted to go over that quickly before we dive deep into preparing for those next steps and get council feedback.
Great.
This is just an update. I won't read through this. This is on the city website of the various phases of the general plan that we've been through. And we're kind of in this phase 3 to 4 section right now. And I will just note, these phases are not all equal. These bottom 3 here are big, long, very substantive steps. So we're down in this section right now. We've got some background data. We've done some initial public engagement and open houses, and we're continuing to do that. This is the slide I would like the council's feedback on to make sure we're on the right path here. We propose as staff as the next steps, and this is kind of how we see it is, we've got 2 survey related things upcoming. One is reviewing the Y2 analytics survey results. There's likely going to be some relevant information there that we can use in the general plan. And then also to prepare and administer the topical surveys as determined by the council. Those topics will certainly help provide input into the general plan process. And then the kind of the biggest next step is we've identified tentatively as hosting 4 district specific town hall meetings beginning in October. And the plan here would be to send a physical postcard to every resident within every district to provide notice of when those town hall meetings will be, and also to provide an alternate means of participation if they're not able to make it to the event. We also would propose that these events be hosted by a consultant that's well-versed and an expert in public engagement events and moderating town hall meetings, that kind of thing. And then, of course, before the meetings would be held, we would sit down with the council and propose how each meeting is planned to go, the methodology, as well as the content to be discussed at those meetings to get council input before scheduling those. This would also include, more conventional notification in the city newsletter and social media and things like that. But before we get underway with a consultant that can help with this public engagement and organize and run this, I wanted to put this framework in front of the council for any feedback on kind of next steps here.
Well, I like it. I don't know about you guys, any feedback?
My initial reaction is that I don't know that I support per se a outside consultant moderator. Or I agree that we need to come up with agreed upon content that we'll cover in each district. I want to make sure that content is what the council agrees that are the main topics. And I've been to, I participated in the charrette where an outside firm outside of Utah ran the charrette. And after it was a 3-night charrette, and after the first night, they decided they didn't want audience participation. And so the last 2 nights, we were told, please don't ask any questions during the presentations, and you can visit one-to-one with our consultants after the presentation, which took away the whole synthesis of hearing what the community was concerned about, because that was dissolved in the process. So I would have to really see exactly what this consultant company had in mind, because I was not pleased with the last charrette I participated in. Was contracted out to an outside firm.
Anybody else?
A lot of that gets down to the, do we have someone, are we already contracting out someone? to
This
do
is above and beyond the general plan grant, so we'll have to find
That would, okay.
somebody else. The goal here is to have an objective, professional, kind of unbiased party, just moderate, and to your concern, Councilmember Burrell, that would be the idea behind, hey, we've got this outline of how these meetings are gonna run, that's approved by the council beforehand, so there would be no curveballs or surprises there.
Yes, quite, I mean, I would expect that we would, I guess, that could be, or I could see someone in your department doing it. As, I guess the question is then, is that determined to be use unbiased or objective or whatever it was?
I think a third party would be, I'd like to hear from a third party to see what they would propose. I think that would be interesting. And what they think that they could accomplish. I think it's something worth at least listening to. So,
The goal there would be there'd be detailed follow-up reports and recordings. Materials presented and everything there, so.
I
Okay.
still want somebody from the planning department. then.
Well, absolutely, we'll be there, yeah. There's no question there.
Okay, well, is that it, Mike?
That's all I have.
Okay, awesome. Thank you.
Is October an okay time to shoot for?
Be wary of the 21st.
We have to avoid the big holidays. We have to avoid UEA. We've got to get past the beginning of school, so. Okay. So it lands us in October. That's kind of the sweet spot here.
That sounds good.
If
Thank you,
choose
Mike.
The later weeks, you bring candy.
Sure, yeah, fair enough.
So item 6 on our agenda is a review of calendars and upcoming events. The community block party, which I'm really excited for, it will be on August 25th. That's from 5 p.m. to 8 p.m. here at City Hall in the parking lot. Hopefully we'll all be able to participate. The Planning Commission will meet September 7th at City Hall starting at 5 p.m. Bark in the Park will be on September 17th, starting from 10 a.m. until 1 p.m. And then future council meetings, September 6th and 20th, October 4th and 18th, November 1st and 15th, and December 6th and 20th, all starting at 4 p.m. So we do have an item to discuss in a closed meeting, and this will pertain to pending litigation. So at this point, Scott, I'm going to let you say what you want, so we get in and out how you want.
That's not disagree with everything, always. Oh, you wanted a motion. I would move that we close the open session and open a closed session for the purpose of discussing litigation.
Second.
Okay, all in favor, say aye.
Hi.
Aye.
Any opposed?
I wasn't moving that.
Okay,
In 4 minutes.
we're gonna go 5.
Aye.
Go get some food.
Oh.